We're studying this amazing discourse of Ahavas Yisrael, and where we last left off, we were talking about the idea. Let's I'll put it up on the screen. We did this one paragraph, which really this idea from the Arizal that mystically all Israel comprises one complete entity, which is the soul of Adam. So we spoke about the idea of the soul of Adam a bit last week. And each and every one of us are a different part of that whole. And this is the basis of the mutual responsibility, which is called arvus, that one Jew is accountable for another if he sins. This is a whole area in Jewish law. It's called arvus. Were you guys able to see the screen?
Yep, it's there.
Okay. So I don't know if I went much into mutual responsibility last week. I don't think
we only did half a page.
Yeah, no, I know. But in that one paragraph that I just read, there was the idea of what's called arvut. Arvut. Kol Yisrael arevin zeh lazeh, that every Jewish person is responsible for one another. And this has many, many applications. I mean, it's not just a bumper sticker. It actually has legal implication. So, for example, we know that if I say a blessing on food, can I say a blessing for somebody else? Well,
Yeah.
if it's a mitzvah, it depends. Most of the time, no. So if I'm having a glass of water, I can make a shahakol, but I can't make a shahakol for you. But kiddush you can actually do. Because, looking for the right buttons to push here to mute. There we go.
Citron?
There we go. But kiddush, the borei pri hagafen, I can make for you because that's a mitzvah. That's fulfilling the mitzvah of reciting kiddush, or making hamotzi on the bread, or making any blessing that we're doing over food as part of a mitzvah that more or less covers it. I'm allowed to say for you. Why? Because you have an obligation to fulfill it, so I can fulfill it for you by reciting the blessing. But here's the story. Even if I say a blessing over the food, let's say I made kiddush and then somebody else walks in. So have I dispensed my own responsibility? Yes, I've already recited kiddush. I've already recited the blessing over the wine? Yes, I have. So can I now make kiddush again for the person who comes in, who now walks in? And the answer is yes, because since that person has not fulfilled their obligation, I have not yet fulfilled my obligation. That's how far this mutual responsibility goes. Now we know in Jewish law takes the idea of making an unnecessary blessing very seriously. So we can't just go saying blessings. I mean, you'd think, wow, the more the merrier. Well, that's not correct. The more the merrier when it's appropriate and effective and done in the proper way. But here I can recite a blessing for somebody who has not yet heard kiddush, even though I already made it for myself, because part of me hasn't yet heard it. Which part of me has not yet heard it? The part of me inside, which is that person, because that person is part of me and I'm part of them. And this is because we are all one soul, you see. We are all one entity. And since we are all one entity, therefore, we have this halachic concept of mutual responsibility, arvut. Literally, the word in Hebrew is arvut, which means we are each a guarantor. We each for each other, and we each and also if you see another person who is erring, in error, sinning. So basically, if I see somebody who is sinning, or doing the wrong thing, I have to go over and tell them, excuse me, are you aware that this is a prohibited activity? There's a mitzvah in the Torah, actually listed right together with loving your fellow and not hating your fellow, is that you have to you have to reprimand your friend. If you see them doing the wrong thing, you go over and in a proper way, you explain to them that this is the wrong thing. Now, this has to be done with tremendous care. I think we've all been the recipient of people reprimanding us in inappropriate ways. Has that ever happened to you?
Rabbi, how do you teach that to children? How do you manage to teach that type of responsibility to a child?
I wouldn't teach them to practice. You mean the idea of reprimanding another?
No. I'm talking about that that to be responsible for the other person's welfare as much as your own welfare.
Right.
How do you start to teach that to a 3, 4, 5-year-old? How?
Modeling.
Just by example?
Well, by example, but not just the example, but if you're teaching young children, so you're going to want to role play and in the classroom, but you're going to want to show what someone is doing, or when you're doing it afterwards, you're going to want to sit down and circle time and explain to the children what it was that happened. Or if you bring something delicious, you have to think it through. So if you're a teacher of young children, you would bring something very delicious to the classroom and you'd be taking part of it and eating it, saying, isn't this yummy? Wow, isn't this nice? And then then some of the kids said, oh, could I have some? Then you'd share with them. And or something of that, in that manner. And there are so many different ways of doing this. But mostly we model it, and then you can explain to the children what it was. And even better, just one sec, even better if you find a child who does it, that you make a big deal out of it. Do you see what Chaya just did? That was amazing. She put aside something that she wanted and she did it for her friend. That is so beautiful. That's because we're all one. That is Ahavat Yisrael. So this is how it's done. There are, Baruch Hashem, some great teachers of youth, really the most important teachers in the world. Isaac.
My son, my wife. Avi, that's so good. You don't hit with objects. Very nice. You can't hit with objects. Okay, mommy, thank you, mommy. He comes back 2 minutes later. Mom, what's an object? But at least he is. Baruch Hashem.
Right. So we tell them and more, but children see much more than what we tell them to do. Unfortunately, children see what we do. Sometimes parents will get irritated because their children are acting in a certain way that they picked up from them. They picked up from us. And, just with a little bit of sense, you realize, okay, well, they came by it honestly. So this is of course, very important. So this is arvus. This is the idea of arvus that he's talking about here. So this is a halachic reality that we each have a responsibility for one another, not just for ourselves.
But that's only for another Jew.
This is the responsibility for another Jew, right? Amitecha, as it says. And the whole idea of the arvut was, and again, I mentioned this last week and I'll mention it again because it's something that's on people's minds. We are one people. We are one people. We are one mishpacha. We are one family. Therefore, we have a certain love and an obligation, not just a suggestion, again, not just a bumper sticker, but we have an obligation to develop a love for every single Jew. Do we have that obligation to develop for all humankind? No, we do not. But if we don't have a love for our own family, then espousing love for everybody else is sometimes, I think, misplaced. We had in the, it's a very popular thing. You had people in the 70s singing all about love, but they couldn't talk to their own family. They couldn't talk to their own children. And all you need is love, and it's just so beautiful, all of the love, but why did you talk to your child? Why can't you get along with your spouse? I thought it's all about love. No, loving everybody else, right? Not loving my family. That's,
Rabbi?
Yes.
It's just hilarious.
I'm sorry, I'm not hearing.
In terms of pointing out sinful behavior of a fellow Jew, how do you deal with a situation where, for example, you're walking along the street and a Jewish neighbor is driving his car. This is on Shabbos. Okay, he's driving his car and he pulls up to you, rolls down his window, and says, "Hey, how you doing?" And should I say good Shabbos to that person to at least make him aware that he's doing something in question?
You must joyously wish them a wonderful Shabbos and thank them so much for saying good Shabbos. It touches my heart that you know that it's Shabbos and you wish me a good Shabbos.
No,
you act in a totally, absolutely loving and non-judgmental way.
Yeah, I have been, from other sources, I had been told that in a scenario like that, you would just say good morning rather than say good Shabbos.
There are many philosophies about it. There are many ideologies, and people can pull out a Gemara here and the Shulchan Aruch there, and quotes from this person here and quotes from that person there. But I will tell you, that from people who have experience in this field, and that we're living in a time that one has to understand that a Jew even saying good Shabbos means he's identifying as a Jew. And that is a self-sacrifice. That is an identification which is coming from the very essence of his soul. And we're not in a position to be, when it says in the Torah, and by the way, this whole topic of reprimanding another, which is all about arvus and the unity that we have, this could be a class all unto itself, and it could be. I mean, it's in a certain sense much more practical. But I just wanted to say a few points about it because it is so important and so significant. So first of all, it says amitecha, and your friend, your pal, okay, in terms of the reprimand. And the rabbis comment et amitecha, et she'itecha, she'imecha, that he is with you with Torah and mitzvot, somebody who is bought into the system of Torah and mitzvot. Okay? So you have to know when, where, and how you can reprimand. Now, reprimand itself is I want to almost say the word reprimand is a word that sounds very harsh. Does anybody here like to be reprimanded? No, nobody likes to be reprimanded. There's a way to reprimand somebody so that they feel that you just complimented them, right? There's a way to reprimand that's coming from caring and love, and that's what it is, because this whole mitzvah is about loving your fellow. We're all one, and since we're all one, I'm responsible for you, and you're responsible for me. So out of the love of my heart, I'm going to find a way to reach you. And not to just spout off because I'm upset or angry because somebody isn't keeping a mitzvah or somebody isn't following the way that I expect them to be following. And this is so important in our day more than ever before, that we have to be...
my kid is asking me, why is he driving? As a result, so you lash out at him that he's, giving your kids a bad example.
Right. Well, that's a horrible thing to do, because then you become the one giving your child a bad example, right? Of how
yelling at him.
Yelling at him and yelling at the other person and judging people. And And the whole thing is, and here's some, it says in Hayom Yom, I think this is maybe the 23rd day in ER, beautiful Hayom Yom. It says, if you reprimand somebody and tell them the right thing to do, and they don't change, that shows that the fault is with you. Because it wasn't coming from your heart.
Rabbi?
Yehudis, please.
Yes, please. But what about when it's your own children, your adult children, and you try to tell them gently that, well, that isn't the Jewish way to do things, or that person isn't really Jewish because they were converted by the wrong way, et cetera, et cetera. And then they yell at you and tell that I'm crazy and that's the way it's done nowadays. Get with it, they say. Then what do? How can you correct them or teach them the right way? Do you try it gently, try it smoothly, and you tell them that I can't consider that person to be Jewish, I'm sorry.
Does your child know what your opinions are in that matter?
Absolutely.
So there's no reason to tell them that. There's no reason for you to go and tell them that. There are people who are following different rules and different ways of Judaism. Okay? And sometimes we find that those people are our own children.
Mm-hmm.
Okay?
Right.
Do not engage in these discussions with your children. Do not tell them the right way. They know what you think. Just show them love. If you have something, and there's no reason why you should be talking about somebody who converted the wrong way altogether, or somebody who's driving it. Why should you even be talking about them?
They bring it up. I should identify such and such and whatever.
Yeah, I mean, I would have to know how the conversation actually goes to know what's going on to advise you. But if your children bring it up, then you have to do the most difficult thing in Judaism to keep quiet.
And okay, then we don't reprimand or speak to other people. I mean, friends we can, but stay away from the family.
Let me say, it says in the Torah, you shall reprimand, and it also says you shall love your fellow. And those verses are actually put together, okay? To teach us. You can only reprimand if it's coming from absolute love. And if you see a reprimand and the person didn't take it the right way, and you're not able to maintain your love because you're getting all frustrated and upset, as we all know how that happens, then this was not a situation that you should reprimand.
Okay, so it's an exception to the rule then.
It's actually not an exception to the rule. It's actually the way that the mitzvah itself says. Let me bring it up here for everybody so we can see it. Hold on a second. So here's the mitzvah in the Torah, and so it says, you shall not hate your kinsfolk in your heart. Okay? Don't hate them. Reprove your kin, but incur no guilt on their account. Now, what does it mean to not incur any guilt on their account? So this is what it says in Hayom Yom. Let me pull up this Hayom Yom because it is very revelatory. I think it's the 23rd of ER. No, that's the, it's going to be around here. So I just want you to see it in the actual words. And I'm sorry that I don't know. Okay, no, it's we have to go back. It's in the 20s. So I've got to go and find the right one. It's worth it to actually see it in the words of the Rebbe. And I'm not sure why. You know what? I'm not getting it, so I'm gonna a yom reprimand. ER 26. There we go. All right, I was a few days off.
I
Yeah.
have the book. Okay, Yom.
Okay, you have a yom yom. So here we go. So before the commandment, you shall surely reprove your fellow man. What does it say beforehand? Do not hate your brother in your heart. That's right there. We saw that, right? Right here, right? You shall not hate your fellow in your heart. Then reprove your kin. I have to tell you, so many times, I mean, going through life, I have seen that reprimand always seemed to go along with some judgment and hatred. Not necessarily heavy hatred, but dislikehood at the very least.
Annoyance.
What?
Annoyance.
Annoyance, for sure, right? So here it says, before it says, you shall do not hate your brother in your heart, for this is a necessary prerequisite for rebuking one's fellow man. And listen to this. This is really, this one brings it home. And the verse continues, do not bear a sin because of him. That is, if the reproof is ineffective. Have you ever reproved somebody and they didn't change their way? Don't raise your hand. It is certainly you who are to blame, for your words did not come from your heart. Wow. It almost makes you want to stop reproving.
No, it's not your fault he did the Avera. You just did not get the mitzvah.
It's your fault that he did not change, is what the Rebbe said, that he did not accept.
Right.
This is maybe a tough pill to swallow, but here's something that we can all understand and take away from this, and it is oh so important. Do not reprove, do not reprimand until you learn how to do so in an absolutely, totally loving way, coming from an absolute concern for the other and love for the other. And even then, maybe you shouldn't. The Rebbe describes this elsewhere in a talk from Parshas Noach. He gives there's an amazing sicha, an amazing talk on this. And this is what the Rebbe explains. It's a whole long thing. I'm going to try to give it to you in short. If you see somebody doing something wrong and it annoys you, not that it bothers you that, oh my gosh, I can't believe somebody is sinning. Oh, if I could help them, right? No. It annoys you. It irritates you. That is proof that you're not the one to reprimand them because you're irritated by their actions. So why are you seeing it if it's not to reprimand? Well, the Baal Shem Tov teaches, and this is even a more difficult pill to swallow. And if you, by the way, I have this is all in my book, 4 Keys of Kabbalah, the chapter of getting along with others. I forgot what the name of the chapter is in case you bought it, but I go through this whole idea of the Rebbe. And before this particular idea, I actually put a warning beforehand. Don't read this unless you're really willing to change. I mean, this is a tough idea. And this is what the Baal Shem Tov teaches. If you see somebody doing the wrong thing, sinning, and you're irritated by them, what that means is the following. God is showing it to you for you to find that sin in your own self and to fix it.
Okay.
Go ahead.
Rabbi,
Mm-hmm.
my situation is different though. When I don't bring up the subject, if my children bring up the subject and reprimand me for not going along with their secular behavior and lifestyle, they recommend me and criticize me for not identifying this one or that, whatever they're doing. And I just keep quiet.
Good. Good for you. That's not easy to keep quiet, and that's what you do. That's what you do. Say everybody has their own path in life, their own ways. And I'm glad you're happy with your ways, and I'm happy with my ways. Let's maybe find a subject that we can both agree on. Potato Kugel.
Is it chapter 12, Rabbi? Chapter 12 in your book?
What is it? How's the chapter entitled?
139.
What is it?
Page 139, one for all and all for one.
Oh, no, that's actually on the Shema. It would be a couple chapters before that. What, the chapter before or two chapters before? Can you relate? That's the name of the chapter. Can you relate?
Oh, okay. Okay.
So Rabbi, in my situation,
Yeah.
I better stay away from them. Stay away from my children, grandchildren, great grandchildren.
Pray for them.
I do all the time.
Is that what you said? I'm not sure what you just said.
Yes, I do pray for them. I ask Hashem to teach them the right path and to study Torah and do mitzvah.
So this is what the Rebbe suggested to many, many people, that the best thing that you can do for those in your life that you cannot change is you daven for them. You say Tehillim for them. That's what you do. But you don't, and you say you're not engaging them in these things, all right? And so they're wondering, why are you like this? So you just have to be an example of loving others. And I would say so I don't know the specifics of the conversation. This really isn't the time and place to get into. If you want to email me or call me, otherwise I'm happy to talk to you further about it, because it's,
What's your email address, Rabbi, for?
Rabbi Rice at jewishlantern.org. I'll put it in the chat.
Rabbi Rice, this responsibility is called Arvis.
Ayin Reish Bet Vav Taf. Yes, Arvis.
So is that similar to Achrayas, or it's different?
It's it's related to, it's not etymologically, but conceptually, yes, for sure. So Arvus is ayin resh bet, which is connected to the word arev, meaning a guarantor. It also has to do with something being mixed together. An irbuv or an areva of something being mixed together. I think an areva was the word for a kneading trough in the olden days. An areva also, because you put everything together and mix it all together.
It's not chickpeas or garbanzos.
In Yiddish, yeah, in Yiddish,
Same word.
Arvis are referring to chickpeas. That's because all the chickpeas get merged together into hummus. No, I'm kidding. Yeah, it's a different language. So
I was thinking that it was real. I was getting into your explanation.
It's Arbis with a base.
Is it with a base?
This comes from Arevus.
It's a good point. Arbis. It's probably from is it an Arabic word? I don't know where it's from, or Yiddish word. I'm not sure what it's from.
Yiddish. I only know Yiddish.
Yiddish. Yeah. I'm all right. Moving right along. So this is an amazing idea of inter-responsibility. In fact, we were committed to this responsibility at Mount Sinai, and every Jew became responsible for every other Jew. And the Talmud goes into how many different levels of inter-responsibility is there of 600,000 Jews, each one responsible for 600,000 others. And I think it's 600,000 times, I think it comes out to 3.6 billion or something like that, levels of responsibility amongst the Jewish people. But because everyone becomes a guarantor, ever guarantor. Anyway, back to our topic. Why do we have this level of mutual responsibility? So in the Talmudic treatises, it's discussed. Maybe it's because we each can be a representative of each other. We can each be a proxy, a shliach of the other. And there's many discussions about why is it that we have this mutual responsibility? What is the halachic dynamic of it? But we see right here, the spiritual reality of it is what? Because we are all one. Because the neshama, on the neshama level, right? Imagine if you look at another Jew and you think ahead of time, especially a Jew that you're having a difficult time, and realize, I'm one with this person. This person and me and this person being separate is actually it's a distortion of the reality. It's the way God made it. that we should see things in this physical, separated, divided way. But Chassidus gives us this insight to realize that we are one. And I'm going to tell you, there's actually a story in the Talmud that supports this Kabbalistic idea. You ready? So this is a Talmud Yerushalmi, and it says that it's explaining the idea of not taking revenge on another person, right? Because this is a whole group of mitzvot all listed together in Parshat Kedoshim. It also says, do not take revenge on another, do not bear a grudge against another, right? Bearing a grudge, I mean, that's really amazing. Harboring no resentment to another for whatever it is that they do. Wow, this is really heavy stuff. So the Gemara explains, if you have a butcher and the butcher takes his cleaver and cuts the meat, and accidentally he cuts his left hand, is the left hand going to go and grab the cleaver and then exact revenge on the right hand? Is there anything more preposterous than this? That would be a very sick person. Because he's one person. It doesn't make any sense. And that's how the Talmud explains the idea of not taking revenge and not bearing a grudge on another. Because we are all one. Now, we don't see that reality. So Chassidus reveals it to us, and with effort, we can come to appreciate it. I now want to go on to the next part of the Mimer. So before I do, I want to give a preface. This next piece, it's a short section in the Mimer, and Ben Zion, I hope it's okay that we're going at a slow pace here. I don't feel the need to rush. Is Ben Zion here? I think he slipped off. Oh no, you're here. Okay. So and this is the next piece involves some Kabbalistic terminology. And I figured what I would do is I would actually share with you, at least in short, these Kabbalistic ideas. So we understand that when we're talking, and we're going to get back to Ahavat Yisrael, you're going to see how it is absolutely connected to Ahavat Yisrael shortly, or towards the end of it perhaps. Kabbalistically, one of the issues that Kabbalah is dealing with is a very big question, which is God himself is one perfect, united entity with no parts. How do you go from being this one perfect, essential entity to all of the division that we have in this world, to the universe, right? All of the galaxies, the stars, the planets, all of the human beings. How do we go from absolute unity to multiplicity? And even if we're talking about the idea of God having a name, we know in Judaism and the prayers and the Torah and Tanakh, we have many different names for God. We have the name Yud Kei Vav Kei, the four-letter name of God, right? Called the Tetragrammaton, meaning four-letter name. Yud Kei Vav Kei. So in the world of Chassidus, we refer to this name. We can't pronounce it. We know we don't pronounce it. Even when we see it in the Siddur, we don't pronounce it. We say Adoshem. So we say in Chassidus, we say Havaya. And what's the response to Havaya? Not bad, Havayu. No, I'm just kidding. It's a bad joke. All right. So Havaya is taking the letters, putting them in a different order. Hey, Vav, Yud, and then Hey, and we can pronounce it in such a way so as not to articulate God's ineffable name. So this name of Havaya is a name, but this name, even God having a name, according to Kabbalistic understanding, is in a sense crazy. How could God have a name? A name already suggests a certain level of relationship. And how can we relate to God? We're talking about the Or Ein Sof, the infinite light of God that is one absolute unity. How can we relate to that? And how can that entity relate to us. And so Kabbalah goes into a vast description. One of the major ideas is talking about the Sfirot, the 10 Sfirot, that God becomes manifest in these 10 different levels, and how God manifests into these 10 different levels is itself a mystery to us. But I'm going to share with you a chart. I've shared it with you before. And this chart, when we look at this chart, I'll make it a little bit bigger. So the whiteness of the page represents what I call the essence of God, which is even higher than the infinite light of God, and it is everywhere. There is no place where it is not. And from this essence emanates the Or Ein Sof, the infinite light of God. And that's this, all of this, the checker
Rabbi,
box.
can you please put that in the chat so that I can print it, please? Is
Yeah.
that possible?
Yep.
Please?
Yeah, I think it should be. Hold on a second. I think that should be easy for me to do.
I'm sorry to ask you. I've never seen this chart before.
Where would you have seen it?
Well, maybe in Tanya.
I created this chart.
No.
Oh, okay.
And the Alter Rebbe didn't draw pictures.
Okay.
This is right. You're right. And thank you for pointing that out. That in fact, the whole idea of drawing pictures to describe these things, certainly in, shall we say, in previous generations would have been very questionable, because, and I'm looking for my, just have to find, I know what it's called, but
Why would it be questionable to draw, to illustrate something?
I'll tell you why. I'll tell you why. Very problematic. I'll tell you why. It's very problematic because
Thank you.
we now relate to it in a concrete way.
Oh,
You see?
okay.
So a very big thing in the study of Kabbalah, even the again, the expression of Kabbalistic terminologies was questionable, because don't think that these words are what it is. We have to retain the abstraction, even as we're using concrete words. And by that same token, nobody wanted to draw it. Nobody would draw a chart. Although you have, even in ancient works, you do have some charts that are drawn. But I think in Chabad in particular, they weren't, keep the idea in your head. Now, in our modern day, I don't know that anybody still has an issue with it, but just don't share it too much, because I don't want to get in trouble. No, I'm kidding. It's all right. But that's the idea of retaining the abstraction. So now we have an idea that the Or Ein Sof is orange checker boxes, which of course nothing could be further from the truth. And that's the problem with so this is just a depiction. And we have to, keep that in mind. So you have this infinite light. Within this infinite light, you have the Tzimtzum, which is the perceived concealment of the light. And you create this yellow checker box area in which God brings about reality. I'm not going to go into all of this because it's really not the purpose of our discussion here. We're going to focus on this yellow, this oval here. This oblong part of the diagram, which is, let me just take my pointing device. So inside of this space, right? So something crazy happens, and that is somehow or another, God starts from this level of what's called Kabbalistically Adam Kadmon, otherwise known as Ak. And at that point, that orange dot, which is of course not an orange dot at all, it's just a depiction, in that spot where the infinite light hits this void, all of creation, of all spiritual levels and the entire universe, it's all there in the blink of an eye, it's all there just in one simple expression. But then you have the unfolding of it. And the whole issue becomes, how do we get from absolute unity to, well, individuation, to individual levels? If God is perfectly one, which he is, so how could you have chachma? How could you have bina? How could you have chesed? How could you have gevura? It's a good question. And the Kabbalists explain this. But how do we even get to these various levels? So one thing I want to share with you is that we can understand that going from infinite dimensionless, again, I want to repeat that word, something that has no dimension whatsoever, dimensionless, into the realm of dimension, is a greater leap than going from the highest dimension to the lowest dimension. So in other words, from the Or Ein Sof, going from this perfect, absolute, unified light into the world of Atzilut, for instance, the world of Atzilut is a world of godliness, but nevertheless, it is now the way that God has become manifested in a dimension. Okay? There's the way that God expresses himself in wisdom, there's the way that God expresses himself in kindness, benevolence, and then in Gevura, in severity, and then in Tiferet, in beauty, in Malchut, and royalty. All of the 10 Sefirot, these become different ways in which we perceive God becoming manifest, although God is perfectly one. So God, now that we can perceive God and even have a name for God, where's the name of God? Is it up here in the world, in Adam Kadmon? Is there a name of God? No, there isn't.
No.
And even as we go down, there's no name of God. The first time where we have the name of God really is in the world of Atzilut. And that's where you have the four-letter name of God, as you can see here in the purple boxes, the Yud, the Hey, the Vav, and the Hey, representing each of the worlds. But that all of the names of God are the way that the Sfirot express themselves in the world of Atzilut. And by the way, if this is the first time that you're hearing about this, there's no way you're going to get it all. So if you don't get it all and you're just starting to touch the surface, you're exactly where you should be. It's quite a bit that I'm trying to stuff into the next 10 minutes that we have together. Now here comes the really interesting thing. When we talk about the 10 Sefirot, which you can see on the left side over here, the 10 Sephiros, we're 98% of the time in Kabbalah and Hasidic philosophy, we're talking about the midot, the attributes, the way they are in the world of Atzilus. Okay. However, these midot have a form, a primordial form. In other words, there's the way the Sefirot existed in this world. You see this explosion mark? That's what we're going to focus on here for a moment. This explosion is called Shviras HaKelim, which means the broken vessels. So this is all from the ideology of the Arizal, who brought this all forth to us. And this breaking of the vessels, I now want to focus on this idea here, the breaking of the vessels. And that is in the world of Tohu, the world of chaos. As we say, the world, everything was void and desolate. There was a level in the spiritual hierarchy of chaos and confusion. And I'm going to try to explain that right now in short. And I'm going to do it, well, here it goes. So the emotions in the world of Tohu, you already had all of the 10 Sefirot, but the 10 Sefirot did not interact. They did not interrelate. Each Sefira was an absolute, pure expression of what it stood for. So the midah, the emotion of chesed, contained no gevura. There was no mitigating attribute. Chesed was pure chesed. Gevura was pure gevura. Tiferet was pure tiferet. Each expression was absolute. I want to use an analogy, which again, it's only an analogy. And of course, a lot of parts of the analogy aren't going to work. But when you have a 2-year-old who is now getting in touch with their emotions, and they have emotions, would you call the emotional, would you say that a 2-year-old has emotional equilibrium? No. So at the first place where the emotions start to express themselves, they express themselves in a total way, without relating to anything else, without any, like something can happen. And when you get older, you say, okay, this will pass. All right, this isn't the whole picture. We have mitigating ideas that allow that our emotions can occur in an equilibrium. And that comes with maturity. All right. But at the very first level of the expression of the midot, in the world of Tohu, this is a very high spiritual level. Each emotion stood on its own. And because each emotion stood on its own, well, going back to our 2-year-old, what happens when when there's some emotional expression? It could very easily lead to a tantrum or a breakdown. Because there's the emotions can't. Let me tell you the other side of it, how emotions can work with each other to create a net that will not allow you to fall apart. And that comes with maturity. That comes with what we call, in the Kabbalistic terminology of that, is hiskalelus. And here, take a look at the 10 spheros in Atzilus. Let's take a look at Chesed. If you see are you able to see the yellow lettering inside of Chesed?
Yes.
In Chesed, you have Chachma, Bina, Das, Chesed, Gevura, Tiferes. You have all of the 10 spherot are contained inside of Chesed. Every Midah in the world of Atzilus and downward, they're all going to be inter-inclusive, meaning that everything understands that it's part of everything else, that it's part of an entire system. You see, maybe, just again, by way of analogy, maybe the first time we have the emotions have to stand on their own. And just like in youth, the youth, a person has to get the idea of who they are. They have to get their own identity. Once they have that strong identity, then they can start to share. But before they get that identity, everything is mine. I see, it's mine because it's mine. If I want it, it's mine. If I see it, it's mine. Right? This is a common phenomena amongst 2-year-olds, sometimes 70-year-olds too. But that's another story, right? With a lack of maturity. So, getting back to our idea here, the world of Tohu, each emotion stood on its own. And because it stood on its own, it could not maintain the light. And there was a shviras hakelim, a breaking of the vessel. Well,
Rabbi, can you
yes.
go back to the diagram? I was going to say something about that.
Sure.
So you were saying that all these things within this long egg are containing the name of Hashem, right?
Well, the name of Hashem really manifests mostly starting from the world of Atzilus.
Right. So I happen to know this not because I'm a Kabbalist, but it's because my anniversary is the day after Yom Kippur. And the day after Yom Kippur is called God's Nomen, God's name. because it's above any of the names of God.
Well, Guts Namen actually begins the 4 days between Yom Kippur and Sukkot. You've got 4 days, and each of those days is associated with the Yud, with the Hey, and the Vav, and the Hey. So Guts Namen is actually about the expression of God's name.
Because I was told that it was specifically the day after Yom Kippur, and it was that day that was above all the names of God. And that's why it's called Guts Namen.
Well, there might be such an explanation as well. Okay, the simpler, and listen, there is so much information out there, and Kabbalistic information, but the simpler meaning is, I mean, if it's above God's name, it wouldn't be called Guts Namen, would it? I mean,
It's just a show. I mean, every day has a different aspect of God. So to call this one God's Namen is showing that it's so above God's names that it's called by this name, which is called God's name. It's not really any name at all.
Okay. All right.
Just a guess.
All right. Could be. And happy birthday.
It's my wife's anniversary, the day after Yom Kippur.
Okay. Mazel tov.
That's how I knew about the Guts Namen, because they told me it was a special day.
It is indeed. So now getting back to this idea of this broken vessel. So here's my question for you. So who's going to clean up this broken vessel, and how are they going to do it? Something breaks in the kitchen, now someone's got to clean it up, and there's got to be a way to clean it up. Okay.
Every Jew to clean up. It's up to all of us.
It's all up to all of us to clean it up. And there's a word for that cleanup. There's a Kabbalistic terminology. What is that called?
Tikkun.
It's called tikkun. Tikkun means correction. And so what is the correction Kabbalistically? What are we talking about when we speak about a tikkun? A tikkun is really all about putting back together these pieces. It's more complicated, but I'm going to keep it simple at this point because we're almost at an end. The way that we create the tikkun is through realizing that we're all one. We're all united within Hashem. And this is from a particular divine name called the name of Ma, Mem-He. I'm going to share this with you as well. We may get into this next week if you're interested, but the name of God, the Yud, the He, the Vav, and He, has got 4 different Kabbalistic spellings that will come up with different, when you say Yud, we may not come to a conclusion this week, so we'll just continue it next week. But when you say Yud, there's the written Yud, but you hear Yud. So Yud, it can actually be spelled out Yud, Vav, Daled. That's Yud. That's called in Kabbalah, that's called a milui, the rest of the letter that is only available in the audio version of the letter. So when we say Yud, we're always thinking about the written, the text, but there's also the audio version of the letter. Well, that audio version also has got letters, and that's Yud. And the gematria, the numeric value of Yud, is going to be 20. Then Hey, well, there's 3 different ways of spelling Hey. There's Hey Yud, there's Hey Aleph, and there's Hey Hey. There's different ways of spelling Vav. Vav Yud Vav, Vav Aleph Vav, or just Vav Vav. We're not going to get into all of this. It's not relevant. The point is that Kabbalistically, there are 4 different ways of spelling out the Yud, the Hey, the Vav, and the Hey. And the one that we're interested in is called, the name that's called Ma, Mem-He, the one that adds up to 45, because that is the world of Tikkun. And that is the world of interrelationship. That is the world that each one of us has a part of the other. And that is the source for Ahavat Yisrael. Because we all realize that, okay, I'm one, but I'm a part of you and you're a part of me. It's all one. We'll get back to this next week, God willing. And we'll see it, because this is going to be in the words. We'll see it in the words of the Tzemach Tzedek and the Maimer, but with this preface, the words will become a little bit easier to understand. You might want to, if you're not familiar, if you haven't heard this before, Rabbi Smith puts up recordings and you're welcome to listen to it. If you listen to the last 10, 15 minutes, it might be useful before next week's class. So we'll go forward with the way that Tzemach Tzedek then talks about this in the Mimer. It's this short portion, but I figure if we go through these levels, we'll have a better understanding. So, okay, questions? Thank you.
I find it very clarifying to very, very esoteric concepts.
So I'm making the esoteric lessoteric.
Less is more.
Yeah, well, for this. All right. Well, have a very wonderful rest of the week and studying. And God willing, we'll see you next week at this time.
Thank you, Rabbi Rice.
Thank
Have
you
a
all
good
very
day,
much.
everybody.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Like I said.
Debbie, can you put that second chart in the chat?
Yeah. There you have it.
Thank you. And if you want to give another class, I mean a private class on this, no problem. Gaia.
It's it's a lot of heady stuff, but I think sometimes we go into it in greater depth and get a little bit of a better. Every time you study, you get a little bit of a greater clarity of it. But here's one thought that I generally have, and that is, we're going from the idea of infinite. I can understand of a concept of infinite, of that which is beyond any measure. Okay, I can understand such a thing. Finite dimensions, that's going from the dimensionless into dimensions. Boy, you're expecting that to make sense on top of it. It's like you could imagine that there were some very drastic things that occurred and things that are going to be beyond our comprehension, because it's just ultimately it's beyond how you can get from there to here. There's going to be some elements that are going to be beyond our pay grade, shall we say, when we shouldn't be surprised. Yeah,
But that's the hardest thing for a person to accept, that there is something that he just cannot understand, no matter what, no matter how it's presented and which way it's presented. What do you mean? I'm not going to understand. That's it.
right.
When I first learned Hasidus, I didn't think I wasn't going to understand. I thought I understand 5%, 10%, but the other 90% is understandable. And eventually I'll understand as much as I can.
And
Yeah.
at this level, you understand more than I do, probably, because having gone through the study. No question.
We'll have to team up, make a tag team. Thank you, Rabbi
I
Rice.
still don't understand.
All right, you're very welcome. All right, be well. Have
Thank you,
a
Rabbi.
wonderful rest of the afternoon. Take care.
Thank you.
Thank
You
you.
too. Bye-bye.
Thank you, Rabbi.